Hi, Megan. Thanks so much for talking to me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved in the industry to start?
I'm a filmmaker and an advocate. I've been in the screen industry for over 18 years. I made my first short film when I was 16, actually, and then studied at UTS. And then made a whole bunch of short films and wrote a bunch of feature scripts. And then in 2016, I released my first feature, Crushed. And I'm also an advocate, so I'm the president for Women in Film TV New South Wales and on the board member of WIFT Australia.
Yeah, great. So I thought today, since you had a bit of experience with marketing and distribution, that we could get some insight from you and help people along the way. So tell us a little bit about when people should start looking at this when they're deciding to make a feature film.
I think it's really important to start thinking about your marketing and distribution right from the get-go. So, when you're writing your script and you decide, okay, this is the script I know I want to make, and you're starting to think about pre-production, you really need to start thinking about, well, what are your niches? Like, what genre is your film, or is it a documentary? Are there certain groups in particular that are going to be interested in your film? And not only that, but are there certain kind of locations? So, is your film set in country New South Wales? Is people from that town going to be interested in helping you shoot the film and be part of the filmmaking process, but then also be audience members and champions at the end of the day? So it really is thinking about who is your potential audience. Where do they hang out, particularly online? Like, are they Facebook people? Are they Twitter people? Are they Instagram people? Because different age groups or different tastes, like different hobbies and things like that will be in different areas. And starting to make contact with those groups in a meaningful way and in an authentic way. So, for instance, in Crushed, it's a film set in a winery. Very early on, we started following people on Twitter who were wine companies or wine lovers or wine tastemakers or bloggers, and interacted with them. So it wasn't about us trying to say, hey, we're making this film. It was us interacting with them about wine.
And so would you do that before you've even written a script, for example, when you have an idea?
I would think that probably not before I start writing the script for the marketing purposes, but it would be more to do with research to ensure that the script I'm writing, I think for me, I think different writers are, have different processes, but for me, when I decide on an idea that I think I want to write, I'm going to do a whole bunch of research, and part of that is actually seeing, right now I'm writing a film about 4 middle-aged women who go bushwalking, so it's kind of like looking at, well, what kind of hikes are those women interested in doing? Where would they hang out online? I'm kind of interested in that for character building, but at the same time, it is gathering intelligence for my marketing and distribution. So for that film in particular, I haven't started building an audience yet, but I am thinking about how I might do that when it comes time.
So would you do that as you, or would you create a separate page, for example, for the film?
I think it's important to start branding your film early. So right now, I haven't branded that film yet. So it would just be me looking around and interacting and maybe liking a few Facebook pages and things that I think are going to be interesting for me for research. But when it comes time, probably in pre-production, I would say, because in pre-production, you are going to know what your brand is more, and you're going to be sure of the title of your film and things like that, or more sure than you are in the script stage. So I would say that you're kind of gathering arsenal, I think, while you're writing your script and thinking about audience, but it wouldn't be until pre-production phase. And obviously I'm talking about the way I would approach it if there's not much money. So, if it's a low budget film and, you can't afford to hire perhaps an impact producer who you might bring on early, if you're able to bring someone on early, then that's amazing, but most people don't have that money. So it's, what can you do as the filmmaker or the originator of the idea to start getting people interested in your project early?
What's an impact producer?
So an impact producer, you hear that term more often, I think, in documentary fields, because in documentary they often do event-based releases, and they are particularly based on causes. So there's interest groups who will engage in a much stronger way than your average narrative film. So, but narrative films can absolutely still take on the same principles behind it and definitely get results. And that is what I did with Crush, which is a narrative thriller, mystery thriller film. So an impact producer would help you look at your marketing strategy and how you would reach audiences and your social media plan around that. Again, looking at the niche groups who might be interested. So going back to my film Crushed, it's a mystery thriller set in a winery, complex female lead, thriller genre, women in genre, women in film. Those are the kinds of, when I mention all of those terms, you can already see a bunch of groups are going to be interested. So you've got, the wine lovers, people who like going in, visiting wineries, people who are interested in women in film, people who are interested in female-led stories. The market that was most interested in that film was older women. So also looking at places, interests where that market might hang out.
So do you think it's too late to start your marketing after you've got a product?
I don't think it's never too late to start marketing. Obviously, it's better if you get that stuff happening earlier in the game. But say, for instance, you might have almost completed your film or you've completed your film and now you're like, holy heck, what do I do? Definitely, there's still plenty of room for you to do this stuff. So it's still following the same concepts around finding where your audience is hanging out, becoming an authentic part of that audience, and then introducing your product. So, like I said, you still don't want to go in there and just try and sell people your film straight away, because it's not authentic and they don't know you. You're not part of that community. And look, it's not like you don't necessarily have to be on first name basis with people, but I think it's that idea that you want to be, it's kind of like going back to like your Kickstarter campaign. I think a lot of the rules around the way you should run a Kickstarter campaign is actually the same as the way that you should look at your marketing and distribution plan, especially if you're doing distribution in a hybrid approach where perhaps you're doing event-based screenings. So, and on Crush, we did do our Kickstarter campaign, which helped us actually build our audience later. But the rules are really similar. So, with your Kickstarter campaign, not to ask people for money every single time you post. What you should be doing is posting interesting content. So, hey, look at this cool behind the scenes thing. And then every now and then you say, we'd love some money from you. Do you know what I mean? So you don't want to be nagging people. You want to be giving people something of value. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be around the content of your product. It could also just be interesting facts about wine. Like, we kind of did a bit of a search and found all these cool memes around wine and wine lovers and lots of funny wine jokes and things like that. And it's like, putting them out there. And so it's not always about you. So that's kind of what I mean by being authentic. It's about not always centering the conversation on your product, but obviously you need to put your product in there too.
So this all sounds like a lot of work.
Yes.
How much work do you think is involved? I don't think people realize how much work it actually takes.
It's a huge amount of work. And, when I embarked on making my first feature, I thought the hard part was going to be the shoot. And yes, the shoot was really hard, but actually it's like making a whole film again when it comes time to marketing and distributing your film. And, in the old days, I think there was this fairy tale that you would complete your film and you'd screen it at a festival and someone would come in with a check and they would pay you. And then that's the end of your worries. Yeah. And that's actually, it is like buying a lottery ticket. It's pretty rare for that to happen. And I think, yes, you can still have hope that might happen, but you need to also prepare for the fact that it probably won't. And so it is a lot of work, but what I would say is that you need to think about, you need to be really clear about the priorities for your film. So why did you make this film in the first place? Did you make the film to make money back? Did you make the film because it's about branding yourself and trying to get more money for your next film? So having the industry see you and notice your work. What is the aim? Because that's going to determine how much effort you're going to put into this phase. So sometimes if it's just about making money, then maybe event-based screenings isn't actually the best way to go. Like event-based screenings, you can make money from it, but it's a huge amount of work. And in my experience, 6 months of the 6 months that we were releasing the film, all I did was release the film. I had no time to work on new projects. I had no time to write new scripts. And so that essentially put a hold on my directing career while I kind of made sure that my film was delivered to the market in the way I needed it to be. The reason for that is the reason why I made Crushed wasn't to make money, although that is a great, be really great. And I do try and make money as much as I can. But the first and foremost goal for Crushed was to establish myself as a feature director, get as much press as I could, and get my brand and my name, Megan Riakos, out there. And the best way for me to do that was event-based screenings. And what that meant was I was able to get a number of different reviews. So, you know, having reviews in Film Inc. and having reviews in the Australian newspaper and things like that.
So after doing all that marketing for Crushed, what would you do differently? What have you learned that you'll now do differently on your next project?
One of the things I would do differently if I were to release a film in a similar way to Crushed would be to consider the minimum number of screenings I needed to do. So with Crushed, we ended up doing over 42 screenings. So we, I think about just over somewhere between 25 and 27 were event-based screenings. So they're screenings I attended, and the rest of those were traditional week-long runs off the back of a successful event screening. So, you know, Blue Mountains, you know, there's a cinema up there that ended up putting the film on for a week when they found out that it had a good event-based screening up there. And the reason why I would consider not doing so many screenings is because I feel like that the branding and the exposure that I got would be the same if I had done, say, 15 screenings versus, you know, the 25 in-person ones. And so when you do those in-person screenings, it takes a toll on you. It's financially, it costs a lot to travel around, and you're giving up work to be able to go and attend these things. But it's also the opportunity cost where, you know, for 6 months, when you're releasing your film, you're completely consumed with that, and you aren't able to continue developing other stuff. It's very difficult to do stuff at the same time because you're just exhausted. So I would consider about the location and the number of screenings that I might put on. The other thing that I would do differently, which I didn't really have a choice this time around for various financial reasons and logistical reasons, would be to release the film online quicker. So there was a big gap between our event-based screenings and our online release, and there was a number of unavoidable reasons for that. But part of those unavoidable reasons was because I wasn't prepared early enough to line them up. So it's, you know, getting the most bang for your buck when you're doing all of this marketing for your event-based screenings, and then, you know, having the DVDs, depending upon your market. So we've got an older market, so DVDs do still do well. But then also saying, if you really like this film, it's going to be online in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, or giving them a date, and then being able to follow up because, you know, you've got everyone's email addresses from the screenings, being able to follow up and say, hey, we're now available online, and they haven't forgotten who the hell you are. So when it comes time to release your film, you have to think about what it is you want out of the release. So is the main priority about branding you and branding your film and letting the industry know who you are? Or is your main concern reaching a particular audience? Or is your main priority making your money back? And all those things can be important to you, but one of them has to be the key priority. And then that's going to help you determine how you should release your film and how much time and effort you should spend on the marketing and distribution, and whether or not you do event-based screenings. The other thing to consider when it comes time to think about the number of screenings that you might do is also whether or not your film is going for the producer offset, which is the tax rebate that Screen Australia provides to feature films over $500,000. And part of that, you being able to receive that offset, is having a legitimate theatrical release, which means you need to do a certain number of screenings, and you need to prove that box office to Screen Australia. And for me, that was a very important part. You know, my priority for Crushed was, you know, obviously to brand me as a filmmaker and get people in the industry to know that I'm a director, and to be interested in my career and hopefully help me get my second film up. But I also absolutely needed to do a certain number of screenings in order to obtain that producer offset. So those two priorities for me aligned very much in order to figure out what kind of release I was going to do. So the other thing that I think indie filmmakers don't consider when they're making their films is the amount of money needed to have a good marketing and distribution package. So you really need a great poster and you need a great trailer, and they're not cheap. And do not think that you can just cut your own trailer and that's going to be good enough. It's a really specific skill, and you should get someone who that's their job. And you might be able to cut some great deals with people, but really be sure that you are getting somebody who knows what they're doing, because sales agents and distributors and film festivals, you know, people who might go and see your film, if they see it up online and they know it's screening at their local cinema, those marketing materials are going to be the difference between them purchasing a ticket or not. And I think way too often we scrimp on that. And I think it's because we think, oh, we want to try and get every single dollar on screen. But there's no point in getting every single dollar on screen if no one knows your film exists, because you don't have good marketing materials. So, you know, having good quality press kit that you can give to press outlets so that they can create a story with some really great images. You want to make their job really easy. You want them to be able to go, great, I can put this together really easily, and you need to provide them with those marketing materials. So having a really great trailer, having a really great poster that's eye-catching, but not only that, is making sure you've got a set of really good quality publicity stills from the film, and if you've got BTS, you know, editing together in little nice little bite-sized pieces that you can put out into the world. So it's being mindful, because in order for you to have that collateral, you need to be thinking about that during the shoot. You need to have a good quality stills person on set getting those scenes. You need to find time in your shoot. And I know this is really hard, but you know, you're like, oh God, we've only got 20 minutes to finish this scene. But you also need to, you know, even if it's just 2 minutes where the photographer can actually step on set, grab a coffee or whatever, and let them get some, well, no, you shouldn't grab a coffee. You should be there watching what they're going to shoot. But it's like everyone else can grab a coffee, and because you need to get the good quality stills that are going to help you sell your film. So
do you think these guidelines work the same for a web series, for example?
I think these guidelines work the same for any content. I think obviously you tailor it to the piece that you're doing. And obviously a feature film is different to a web series where it's going to be released. But I do think the same can be said for reaching audiences and tapping into those markets and having good quality marketing material. I think it's about putting your best foot forward, and at the end of the day, it's about branding and reaching audiences.
So what about for people that just don't have the budget to be able to put into that much marketing?
I think no matter what the budget of your project is, and whether it's a web series, a feature, an Instagram stories thing, you need to consider all of these marketing and distribution issues, and think about, you know, what resources you have available to you. So you might not have much money, but what skills do you have yourself that you know that you're good at? Like, are you pretty savvy with social media? If you're not, are you able to find an intern or somebody who's studying at uni, studying that area, or your sister? Or, you know, independent filmmaking is about asking your friends lots of favors. So who in your friendship group might be good at it? Or do you actually, you know, have to sit down and learn that skill? So I think at the end of the day, you have to think about priority. If it's a priority for you for this film to get out there as much as possible and to brand you, then you need to find the time. If you can't pay someone to do it, then you need to find the time and hive off that time in order to complete it. And think about, okay, what is going to be the lowest hanging fruit?
So to sum up, give me your top 3 tips for marketing.
The top 3 things that I would say you absolutely must consider is priority. So what is your priority for this film? What do you want this film to achieve for you? And you can have multiple, but what is your top priority? Because everything's going to inform that. Number 2, I would say, is make sure you know your audience, and not just know them, but know where to find them. And then when you know where to find them, you need to make sure that you are engaging authentically and you're providing value to that community, not just trying to sell them. And then the third thing that I would say is think about cost. And when I say cost, it's not just money, it's also about your time. So think about how much money have you got set aside for your marketing and distribution phase of the project, and how much time are you able to dedicate? Because if you've got more money and less time, then obviously you can still do stuff, and vice versa. But if you're short on both, you're going to have to work out your priorities. So going back to number one. So overall, I think you need to make these decisions, or at least start considering it as early as possible, because then you can be as effective as you can during that marketing and distribution phase.
Great. Yeah. So what projects are you working on next?
So I've got a few things on the boil. I've got what will be the Australia's first women's horror anthology being put together right now. And so I put a call out in July for completed horror short films by female identifying filmmakers, either Australian or made in Australia. And I'm going through the 35 videos as we speak to try and curate what will probably be between 5 and 8 films. So I'm really excited about that. And the idea for that one is to go out to festivals next year and to do an event-based screening on Halloween. So I'm really excited about that because it kind of marries my creativity and filmmaking part of me along with my advocacy, because it's about, you know, raising women's voices up. So that doesn't have a title yet, but it is the Australian Women's Horror Anthology. And the second thing that I'm working on is what will be my second narrative feature, and that is called Hidden Valley, about 4 middle-aged women who go on a hike of a lifetime only to discover one of their ex-husband is stalking them. So a survival thriller, but really it's also about female friendships, and, you know, that women choose different paths in their lives, and along with this idea as well of violence against women. So, you know, and the reason why I was really excited to make this particular film is when I made Crushed, you know, the woman who played Sophie, the mother, so Roxanne Wilson, I just loved working with her and the life experience that she brought to that role. And I was like, I want to see more women. I want to see more characters like that on screen. And I want to know more about their life history. And this film gets me to do it with 4 of those women. So I'm really excited about that.
How far into that are you? Have you finished the script?
So I'm a few drafts of it. I'm a few drafts into the script at the moment. So I'm still getting that to be the strongest script as it possibly can be. But I'm hoping to shoot sometime next year.
So when will you start your marketing?
Once I have my script finalised and we start the pre-pre, so, you know, pre-production is only a short period of time, so, but you know when you're going to lead into the pre-production. So that pre-period of pre-production, I'll be starting my, you know, audience building.
Yeah. And if people want to find out more about you or look you up on the social medias, where can they find you?
So my social media handles are all at Megan Riakos, and my website is my new production company, hemlockandcedarfilms.com. So, but if you search for Megan Riakos, you'll find me. So, yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Megan.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing your future work.